Welcome everyone to the Unit X Inspire Talks, where we try to ask some of the big questions facing design and also thinking about how we connect with the world as critical creative change makers. This year we're working in partnership with Design Factory to host inspiring talks and conversations that hopefully inform your practice, but also the way that we design in a multitude of contexts. And this year also, we're turning the focus locally to think about and to celebrate, to spotlight and celebrate those practices within our city and to be inspired by that local culture and community. And talking of culture and community, I'll hand you over to Paul, who will talk about Design Factory and introduce our speakers.
Thank you, Richard. My name is Paul Micklethwaite, so I'm a reader in design innovation and research lead for design here, and I'm very glad to be hosting or chairing this evening's session. So Design Factory, I'm just going to read the description. Manchester Design Factory is a new innovation hub at Manchester School of Art, which is where we are. It's a vehicle for our community of practitioners, researchers and students, so people in this room, to design locally based sustainable development with the potential to reach well beyond our city. We take a participatory approach to designing innovation which is social and inclusive. The first project that we're working on is an Arts Council funded Creative Campus project in Stockport. Through this activity, the Design Factory will be able to apply design thinking and doing to the theme of repurpose, working with creative businesses and social enterprises to actively develop sustainable ways of collectively thriving. Stockport can be a microcosm for creating positive change which works with what we have and by design amplifies what we need more of. So that's the kind of vision, mission of Design Factory. So it's kind of an umbrella identity really that we're using to work locally on very inclusive, sustainability motivated creative projects. And I think the sense of being local and being part of a community is really important for our creativity. So we have two presentations and then we'll have a chaired Q&A afterwards. So as the presenters are speaking, please do think of questions that you might have. Ideally, your question would relate to both presentations rather than just be really specific about one. And then if you keep that back at the end of the presentations, there'll be a chance, hopefully, to ask your question. So firstly, we have two representatives of NPD Studio Design Consultancy. We have Nathan Partington and Rosie Alexander. So please, over to you.
Hi everybody, I'm Nathan. So I've been living this double life, whereas 2 or 3 days a week I'm a design consultant and 2 or 3 days a week I am an in-house designer for a new startup that we invested in 2 years ago. Both very different businesses, both very demanding in very different ways, and I'll talk mostly today about the consultancy because that's been my life for the last 10 years. I've lived and breathed it. It's something that started around my kitchen table in December 2014. And last year, so this time last year, there was only 2 of us in the business, and there had been 2 people in the business for 8 years. And something that I found really difficult was to get past that level. We had to win so many projects, to have so much revenue, to employ somebody else. And it was a real struggle for 8 years to get to that point. But we did it. Rosie joined us, Alex joined us, and my wife, who is on the left of the picture, also joined the business as well. The 4 people to the right handle the design work, the client relationships, all the stuff that it takes to get a product from idea to manufacture. And Georgina, my wife's role, she's there to put us all in a position to succeed. So whether that is taking away administration work, doing the accounts, doing the quotes, anything that doesn't directly generate revenue falls to Georgina to free us up to concentrate on what we do best. So what's it like to work in a consultancy? Well, it's at times really, really crazy, because you will go from one project in one industry with a particular set of skills that are needed to have to learn something completely different to go into another industry the week after. And it's very difficult to transition sometimes hour by hour from one project to the next. But it's really enjoyable. You get to work on some of the best projects around, and it doesn't really get stale because you're constantly having to reinvent yourself every project that you do. I said to somebody recently that every single design consultancy is the way that it is because of their owner. And the way that their culture is, the way that they present themselves, it is a reflection of the owner of the consultancy. They've put their heart and soul to get it to where it is, to succeed, to keep going when times get tough. And so you can look at all the consultancies within the UK market, and they're all very different, but they are, in my view, all reflective of their owner. We've tried to be different by being the consultancy that says no. And what I mean by that is that on average each year we get about 300 inquiries. And those are inquiries from new startups, private inventors, established businesses and brands. And of that 300, we only really quote on about 70 of them. So that's 230 projects that we say no to on average each year. Of the 70 that we quote, our win rate's about 50%. So we only really take on about 35 projects a year. So the 5 people that I showed you earlier, that could be a team of 15, a team of 20. But we'd be doing projects that we weren't passionate about, projects that shouldn't really exist, products that would be going to landfill, and it's not really what we're about. At the end of my career, I want to be remembered as one of the good guys that actually did products that made a positive difference, had a positive impact on the world, not somebody who created bits of plastic that went to landfill. The truth, though, is that it's not always been like that. In the early stage of the business, we had to take on every project just to get some money coming in, to buy the 3D printer, to buy the laptop, to pay for the software license, to pay for the rent, on all the bills that you need to actually run a business. And it took years and years to actually build up the equipment that we needed and the throughput of revenue to actually start to say no. But we've made that choice, and that choice happened about 4 or 5 years ago, and we've stuck by it. We stuck by it through COVID when it got really, really tough. When on the first day of the very first lockdown, we lost 6 projects, but we still said no. And now we've come out of that. Last year we grew by 50%. The year before we grew by 40%. And I'm really proud that we stuck by what makes us special, because it would have been very easy to revert back to what it was like in the early stages of the business. So when I graduated, I made some really, really stupid decisions. And I listened to the wrong advice, which was to take the first job that came your way. And I did, and it was rubbish, and it was boring, and I hated it. So I left the job after 6 months, and I went to another job that was even worse. And so a year into my career, I'm sat there thinking, well, what have I done? I worked so hard at university, and I've ended up having 2 failed false starts to my career, and thinking that I was on completely the wrong path. At the same time, I had appendicitis. I was really ill. I lost so much weight. I looked like a skeleton. And I was like, what? I don't know how I've got to this position after working so hard. There was also the realization that at the time, I probably wasn't good enough in terms of my design skills, my design thinking, to actually get the type of job that I wanted. So when my health returned, I got a £10,000 loan. I moved to Cardiff to do a master's degree in advanced product design. And it was probably the best decision I ever made. When I left university, I wasn't ready. I don't think that I applied myself as well as I could, in all honesty. So as soon as I left, I was playing catch up to make up for the time that I should have really worked hard at university. But I look back at that now thinking that, well, if that hadn't happened, if I hadn't had the guts to do that, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. So in a roundabout way, it was a good thing that it happened. I wanted to talk a little bit about the difference between design agencies, consultancies, and in-house design teams. I've worked in both, and I'm currently working in both as well, in terms of what we do with SitePod. The main attraction to the consultancy world is it's the variety of work, the variety of projects that you get to work on. We're doing all kinds of different stuff at the minute, and it's really exciting. But but part of that is that because we've selected the projects as well, we believe they deserve to exist. So straight away, there's a passion, there's a desire for us to do those projects. The downside, though, is that you never really get to invest as much time as you want into a project that you would do if you were in an in-house design team. Most of our projects we quote for in terms of hours rather than weeks, months, and so on. So you've got to be able to create a package of work that is suitable for the client to put a product into production in a certain amount of time. So, and you're always against the clock, and time is never on your side. The other thing as well is that in a consultancy, you are the product. When you're working in an in-house team, you're designing, you're creating a product that will then sell to earn revenue for the business. But in a consultancy, I am the product that I sell to a customer. NPD sells Rose's expertise and time to a customer. It's a completely different way of working. If I just go back to my little story, the first job that I got after doing my master's was a job at GTEC. So I'd gone from two really, really rubbish jobs to then GTEC, which at the time was a company that was, in terms of the revenue, was doing about £4 million a year. When I left, the year after they left, based upon this product, they did 90 million. And I was ready at that time. I was ready to take on a project like that, which was really my first major project after university. It went on to be the best-selling vacuum cleaner in the UK for 2 years in a row. And when you're working in an in-house team, you've got the chance to do something really special, because there's a culture within the business. Everybody's moving, or should be moving, in the same direction. There's a team of people trying to deliver that product. At the other end of the spectrum, though, at the lower end of in-house design teams, design can often be seen as a function or an operational role within the business. And it doesn't quite get the same credence that it would in some other organisations. And at the very lowest level, and we've seen this with some clients that we've worked with over the years, that people just don't know what design is. They don't know how to get the best out of a design department. They don't know how to give it direction, how to fund it, how to lead it. And in a lot of businesses, design isn't represented at the senior level, at the board level. And so you don't really have a voice. At the start of last year, I predicted to the team that a client would come to us with an image that they'd generated using artificial intelligence and say to us that they've designed it, so now can we engineer it? And this is the actual image that they sent to us. I obviously said no, I wasn't going to do that. But this is what's happening in our industry at the minute. Each week, each month, the technology behind the artificial intelligence is getting better and better. And as a tool, it is something that can drastically speed up your workflow, but it's just a tool. You're more powerful than the computer. And the thing is with AI, it doesn't understand ergonomics, it doesn't understand user experience, it can't tell you what something should look like, what it should feel like. And that's the power that the human has, and you've got to remember that human element in your work. Something to consider, though, is that as these AI tools get better and more powerful, in the design world, my personal opinion is that it's not enough anymore just to be a visual designer. You've got to offer something more than that. You've got to be multi-skilled in what your offering is to your employer or the business that you work with. My next prediction is that you've all got a product that on it will say made in China. I think there's going to be a point in the future when it says designed by a human on it. I think that's going to become a thing. Some tips on how to use it. So we are actually actively using it in the studio. We're trying to get to grips with it. We don't want to be a company that gets left behind with this kind of technology, so we're trying to bring it into our workflow. The images that you're seeing on the left were created by an AI tool called Midjourney. And the prompt that we put into it was to imagine a 2 kilowatt hour battery pack in the styling of JCB. You can see that on some of them it can't even spell JCB. But my previous point about the AI doesn't understand ergonomics, it doesn't understand user experience, it can't decide how that handle, for example, or where the best place for that handle should be on the product. It's just done something that looks like a handle on something that looks like a battery pack in the style of what it believes to be JCB. But as a way to get started on a project, the way that we use it is, rather than doing a Google search for inspiration, we'll use the AI tool to give us inspiration for the exact product that we're creating. From that, we'll take those images and design around it in our own way. We'll put our own slant on it, our own ideas about user experience and style and function. So that's how we use it, how we are using it now to get started on projects. And just a little bit of advice for anybody who's designing a physical product is that you should always try to design the experience of using it, and the engineering will follow. If you lead with the engineering, quite often you'll forget about the human element behind it. A little tip, there's a guy on LinkedIn called Hector Rodriguez. Follow him on LinkedIn. He's constantly posting articles about AI tools, how he's combining up to 6 different pieces of software at a time. It's really, really interesting to watch him because he'll save you the trouble of having to figure out how to build it into your own professional practice. We get at least 5 applications a day for work experience, for jobs, from people all around the world. And there's probably people in this room that have sent emails out, messages out on LinkedIn to companies to try and get work experience or jobs. And I wanted to just give you a bit of insight into why you've maybe not been getting some responses to your messages. The first thing is your message is probably not good enough. We literally get emails saying, "Can I have some work experience? Thank you." That's the sort of message that we get. And they get deleted straight away. If your message starts with "Dear Sir, Madam," it gets deleted straight away because you've not shown us straight away that you can be bothered to find out who your message should go to. It should be really easy now to go onto LinkedIn and to find the person that you want to read your message. So you can, in the subject line, "For the attention of Nathan Partington," for example, is a better way to start it than "Dear Sir, Madam." Generic emails stand out a mile. Again, they get deleted straight away. We don't have the time to give our time to somebody that can't just give us 5 minutes of effort, especially when they're approaching to work with us, because it shows that you're lazy. It shows that you're not prepared to go that extra mile, and especially when you're talking about your own career. The key is perseverance, though. You've got to keep at it, because the perseverance and timing go together. A company can only bring you in when they have the right amount of work, the right amount of revenue to actually pay your wages, pay your salary. And it's not always the right time for you at that moment, but keep trying. If there is a company that you want to work for, contact them once a month, once a quarter, keep in touch with them. Say that it might not be the right time now, but it might be in 3 months' time. A few words of wisdom. When you actually get to the job interview, a little story. My very first job interview, I went there with my portfolio. I stood up and I spoke for half an hour. My portfolio was upside down and back to front. and I didn't even know. And so you can go through these moments, you can get things wrong, you can fail, but you can come out the other side. But you will mess up, you will get it wrong, but take the opportunity to learn from it. So once you're at the interview though, there's certain things that you could say to make yourself stand out from the other candidates. Ask them how they're going to develop you. Ask them what projects you'll be working on. Ask them what is the role of design within the business. You want to find out whether you are going into a company that really values the work that you do, or is it just an operational role within the business. Ask them what challenges the design department's up against. The reason that you're asking that is because you're trying to figure out whether somebody's left. Are you replacing somebody? What's the mood like in the team? Are you going into a high-performing team or a team that's got low morale at the moment? And the very last question, which I forgot to do recently to my own demise, was ask the interviewer if you've shown them enough at that moment in time to award you the role. Is there anything else that you could have showed them or that they need to see to be able to make a decision? We recently lost a £20,000 project because I didn't ask that question at the end of the pitch. We had all the answers needed, but because I didn't ask that, we didn't get the role. We didn't get the job. So it happens after the interview process as well in your professional career, but it's always a good way to finish any meeting, any interview, whatever it might be. I always remember at university, we nicknamed it the fear. And there were certain things that students would do or certain activities that they had to do as part of the course. And it would put the student out of the comfort zone to a point where they'd get up and they'd leave the room. They'd go to the toilet, they wouldn't come back. They'd say they were getting a coffee, you'd never see them again. And you've got to push through those moments. The reality of it is, when you start a design course, it's one of the only courses where you've actually got to acquire skills to be able to do the degree. And lots of them as well. Lots of different softwares, lots of manual skills, motor skills like learning to draw in a lot of instances. The reality of it is you only get better by doing it, and you've got to practice, learn from others, listen to people who are more experienced than yourselves, and then just repeat it. Just keep doing it over and over again. The other thing is to not judge your own performance against the performance of others. And this is the same to be said for in your professional career as well. You are where you are at that moment in time. You can't change that, you just got to accept it. Another interesting fact is that there was a piece of research done that said the more hobbies a person has, the more creative they are. And I've thought about that a lot during my career, but it kind of makes sense. If you're into more things, you're willing to try new things, you're willing to fail, the chances of that is that your personality is more open to failure, more open to trying new things, and more open to learning. So try new things. Get yourself out of your comfort zone as often as you can. The last point is don't settle. When you reach a level of competency, that doesn't have to be the end of the journey in that particular skill or area of expertise. Keep trying new things, keep learning, follow new people on Instagram, whatever it is, just don't settle for where you are at that moment in time. The biggest fear-generating thing on my course was actually drawing. And that this would be the thing in which half the class would leave the room anytime we had to do so. There's a website called sketchaday.com, and everything you need to know about drawing is on that. So if that's an area of your professional practice that you're struggling with, go on there, watch the videos, repeat 1 hour a day, and after a month, you will be exponentially better than you were at the start. The last point on there is that we get a lot of portfolios through, like I said, at least 5 a day. And rightly or wrongly, when we view a portfolio and it's got really good, and that person has really good drawing ability, that has taught us that they've put time and effort into acquiring a skill which is really difficult. And that does tell us something about the individual. So I would encourage you to reflect on that. And if it is a part of your professional practice that you are struggling with, then put some time and effort into improving it. So I've talked a little bit about myself, my experiences, but I graduated 18 years ago. And I thought it might be more interesting and more current for Rosie to talk about some of her experiences as well.
Thank you. Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Rosie and I've been at NPD for the past year now. I graduated in August 2021 with bachelor's in mechanical engineering. Since then, I worked in medical device design, and then now I've been at NPD for the past year. One of the main things I've learned while at NPD is how valuable it is to take things from design all the way through to manufacture. This isn't something that I got from my university degree, and it's something that I've had to learn through experience, but I think if you can keep that in mind during university, it's something that's invaluable when you start full-time work. And just some things that I wish I'd known before I graduated. Practical hands-on knowledge is also key in getting you a head start. So when I first started at NPD, I took a lot of time doing this, and I think you would have a head start if you started doing that. So taking things apart, putting them back together, modelling things, seeing how things work. It just gives you a lot of transferable skills moving forward. And then also on that, manufacturing processes. So I was taught this during my university degree, but it's another thing to apply that to real world products. So what effects they have when you're doing your design. So whether something's made of sheet metal, injection molded, all these sort of things are good to have in mind. And then also expectations versus reality. So what I expected from full-time work versus what I know now that I've been working for about 2.5 years. So don't worry about not knowing everything straight away. And also there's some things that you just have to learn through experiences. So things like communicate with clients, meeting deadlines. These things you can't know everything all at once, and embrace the learning experience of this. So some projects that I've worked on. The picture that you can see there is a battery storage unit. So I've done everything from injection molded parts, sheet metal fabrication, and large-scale assemblies, such as the one you can see on screen. And then also just a few words of advice. So when you're going for an interview, be honest about what you know and what you still need to develop. Technical skills can be taught, but if you have a positive attitude, that does count for a lot, and people will be able to see how eager you are to learn. Take chances. So my first job after uni, I was super unqualified for. They were asking for 3 years of experience and I had none. So I think even if you think you're underqualified, just take the chance and believe in yourself. Also something that I'm still learning now is to embrace being junior in your career. Learn from those around you. Try not to compare yourself to people who have 10 or years experience from you. It's not productive. Just try and enjoy the experience overall. So.
Thank you. Thank you, well done, Rosie. A few final bits. When I was at GTEC, the technical director always used to say, "Nathan, you need to eat the frog. Eat the frog, Nathan, eat the frog." And he would say it every week to me, and I didn't really know what he meant. I thought it was some silly joke. But then years later, I met him, and I asked him, "What did you mean when you said eat the frog?" And he said, "You always had 1,000 things to do in the week when you worked at GTEC." And he said, "You always put off the one thing that you didn't want to do." And it's the same in life, it's the same in work, and the same when you're doing your studies. there's always a temptation to do the thing that you want to do rather than the thing that you should do. And when you're in that moment, just remember to eat the frog, because as soon as you get the frog out of the way, the other 999 things you can actually enjoy. So get rid of the thing that's bugging you. Some other observations in that, I remember, I talked about the fear, I talked about students just getting up and walking out of the class when they didn't want to do the thing that they didn't want to do. Don't be the student that leaves early when you get out of your comfort zone. When you're out of your comfort zone, that is the opportunity to actually learn either a new skill or to build resilience in an area that you don't currently have it in. And design, like I mentioned earlier, it isn't like other subjects. You've got to acquire new skills to actually do the job. And when most students start their design career, they actually don't have the toolkit needed. And I don't mean physical tools, I mean skills and expertise. You don't have that to actually do it. You've got to acquire them. And if you're the person that's leaving early or leaving when you get out your comfort zone, you're never going to get to the point where you could be. Rosie touched on it in that don't compare yourself to others. It's a road to nowhere, and it actually doesn't help. Focus on where you are now and where you want to be, and don't look at anybody else. Take advice from people, learn from other people, but don't judge your own performance against the performance of others. And the last bit is to actually enjoy it. When you're at university, you'll never get the opportunity or the time to have so much time to do the things that you're doing now, to work on your skills, to learn new things. You never get that when you get in the professional world, and enjoy it, because it is actually one of the most rewarding careers you can do. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nathan and Rosie. Perfectly defined as well. So much appreciate that. That frog looked delicious. So let's go straight on to Jason Iftikhar. We'll talk about Swifty scooters. So please, a round of applause for Jason.
Well, just say thanks really for inviting me over. It's great to always come and talk to the students and give a little bit back. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my history and about the company that I co-founded with my wife called Swifty Scooters. So my, design career started just around the corner. I did a foundation course after doing my A-levels just here. I've not been here for years, and it's changed so much around here since I was here, 1998, I think it was, 88, 89. I had a great time doing the foundation course. We tried all sorts of different disciplines. I actually thought I was going to go and do fine art sculpture, weirdly enough, but one of the tutors on the course introduced me to the concept of product design, and I was like, "Oh, cool, yeah, that sounds great." And I remember we had a really cool room over there that had all the prospectuses from all the different courses, and I was leafing through and looking at these product design courses, and it really fit for me, and I never looked back from there. It was something that I wanted to pursue. And so I got a unconditional offer from Middlesex University and Kingston University. And the weird story is that one of my friends on foundation ended up going to Kingston. She ended up being best friends with my wife, who was at Kingston. And we would have met there if I'd have chosen to go to Kingston, but I went to Middlesex and did product design and engineering. It was a kind of a hybrid course, which is really cool. So you could choose modules in product design and then modules in engineering as well. So I chose all sorts of different modules, electronics, mechatronics, pneumatics, all sorts of stuff, because I was just always inquisitive about manufacturing and making stuff. So I did a 4-year degree. I did a placement year between my second and my final year, and that was a really interesting story. So I applied for a position designing Happy Meal toys. which was a really weird experience, but also fun. McDonald's, love them or hate them, you know, they produce loads of these things every year. They're all around the world. They cover all the Disney movies. So back then when I was a student, you know, I don't think it got the hard rap, or it wasn't really a demon kind of brand as it is perceived to now with fast food, etc. So it's a really cool kind of experience. It was probably, I was about 3 or 4 months into that placement, and that's when 9/11 happened, which was awful, obviously. I was located in Oxford Street in London, and about a week later we came back into work, and the whole building got swarmed by a load of FBI agents, and it felt like it was like something out of a movie. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I thought there was some of a terrorist attack or something, but what it turned out to be was the company that I worked for like the last 20 years, they designed the concept of the Monopoly game for McDonald's, and it went around the world, and you could win like $1 million tab. Turns out that the executives were giving these tabs out to friends and family. And it was like a 10-year investigation, and I was there on placement when it all got busted and they all came in. And anyway, everyone lost their jobs. I went through getting made redundant on placement, which was like a kind of a wonderful experience because I was still a student. So I like went through all of that process. There was like, you know, lots of people that had families and stuff and big mortgages, and it was terrible for them. But I was quite lucky. So I did that for like 6 months, and then I went on to work for a design agency in Angel in London, and we did all sorts of wonderful stuff like medical products, all sorts of cool things, interiors of aircraft, and the Happy Meal toy placement was paid, but the other placement I went on to, because it was midway through the year, it was completely unpaid, and I worked there for about 8 months, and I worked completely for free for the agency. I got some really great projects under my wing there. And some great experience. So I went back to university, and I was convinced that I was going to go and work and live in America, because I'd got a scholarship to go and travel, because I won a design competition, and I went to go and see some pretty cool names. Went to see IDEO over in Palo Alto, loads of different agencies in San Francisco. But I'd applied to go to the Royal College to do design products, and I found out in the summer that I got the place. So I came back and I did a 2-year master's degree in design products there, and I met Fab there, which was cool, and Jeff as well, Jeff Mann. And I had the best 2 years of my life. It was so fun to work there. I had a little tour of your facility today, and it very much had the same kind of feeling. When I did my master's, it was like there's all the different disciplines on different levels, and my wife was studying there. My now wife was studying there on fashion course, and we ended up working together on some projects. So, you know, today just going around for that little tour, it was great to see the facilities you have. I mean, you have some amazing equipment here. I would kill for some of the machinery that you have in my place here. So really make use of that while you can. So I did my master's, which was cool, and then I ended up going out in the industry, and I worked for all sorts of different companies for about 2 years in London. I designed luxury watches for Tag Heuer. We did solar-powered boats. I did furniture. I did all sorts of different stuff. Did Nokia phones. Did concept stuff for the Tag phone, the Levi's phone. This was like, I'm talking now 2005 or 6, something like that. And I didn't really like working for other brands. I didn't like working for other agencies. I really always had the ambition to have my own company and build something. And I've always had this thrill of manufacturing something, you know, multiple of. It's always been very interesting to me. So I ended up leaving London because I got burnt out in London. I had a massive postgraduate loan. I had £40,000 I had to pay back. That was the 2 great years that I had. I blew all that cash. And I ended up paying it back. It was all fine. But I burnt myself out working a number of different jobs at the same time. So I got this opportunity to move to Italy and teach at the University of Bolzano. And I did that for a year. And it was so much fun. I had a great time. It's a trilingual school. So I taught in English. And they're crazy. They paid me to fly every week there and back to teach, you know, a number of hours, and then I would come back. So what I did was I actually moved out there and stayed there. And that's when I kind of started to put together a bit of a master plan of what I wanted to do. Because I was like coming towards, you know, late 20s. And so me and my wife were then we got together then, and we both had a plan to come back to London because she was in Nuremberg. She worked for Puma, designing super high volume sports apparel. So like some of her collections were like doing like 1 million pieces, which is just blows the brain really when you think about that volume. It's nuts. And we wanted to create a brand, and we wanted to create something that had meaning and purpose, and it would make us feel happy, and we could, you know, be in complete control of everything. So take note, your final year projects are really important, because my final year project at the university was a scooter. It was a folding scooter. And you know, lots of designers will always probably tell you the same thing. They'll say something is never finished. You always want to make it better and better and better, right? It's the reiteration of something. It's what drives us as human beings to create and manufacture and always innovate, right? So we were living in Dalston in London, and we had lots of cycling accidents. I had a really bad one. It could have been fatal. So I didn't want to cycle anymore. So the idea of like a scooter was really appealing, and like I'd done the project before, so I was like, you know what? Why don't we take that project and re-engineer it, re-look at it, and see if we can make a prototype. And what we'll do is we'll launch our own little agency, and we'll get projects on, and that'll fuel the cost of setting a brand up and building a brand. So that's what we did. We designed a bunch of projects. We exhibited at 100% Design, I think it was called then. I don't think it exists anymore, but it was at Earl's Court at the time. And we launched, and it was back then in 2009, 10. That's when you actually had bloggers that would come around, and they would like cover a show, and they'd do proper journalism rather than just, you know, offline remotely. And we got picked up, and we designed the product, which was the folding scooter, which is the one that you see on the screen. And we got picked up, and it went like literally viral, and we got an order for 200 pieces from a distributor. I'd made 25 by hand in my workshop, and I then came back with like scratching my head, like, how am I going to make 200? It took me 3 months to make 20. I'm not sure we're going to be able to do this, but anyway, it was a really fun journey, and I'm now 14 years into that process, and we've sold hundreds of vehicles around the world. We have a mission, and that's to continue to build our brand. We manufacture awesome products that make people feel great. And we've got so many examples of people that just love what we do because of the feeling that we give them when they ride our vehicle. And it's not just riding the vehicle, it's everything. It's the whole customer experience, from when you buy it, when you open the box, from the customer support, from the fact that you can replace every single component on that thing. We've got products that have been in service for like over a decade, and they're still going strong, and that's because of how we make them. We're not cheap by any means. We're an expensive product. We're sometimes 2 or 3 times the price of, you know, our competitor, but that's because we don't really like to cut corners in what we do. It's not probably the best business sense to do that, because it's hard to make money that way, but it pays off in the end. And you know, great things take a long time to build, and we are on the cusp. I'll talk a little bit about it in a minute, of making transport history in the UK. And it's been 2 years of really hard work, but yeah, it's cool. So keep an eye on what we're doing, social media wise, etc., because there's a cool announcement coming up. So what do? We design and manufacture. We've got 10 years of experience now. When I started, I had very little experience in terms of manufacturing. I literally got on a plane, went to Taipei Bike Show, met a load of suppliers, won them over. They started making bits for us. We started assembling here in the UK. Then we started making in Taiwan. Then we made in China. Then we made back in Taiwan. Then we came back here. It's a long story. I won't go into it all. But the short story is there are no rules. You just go out and do it. And you know, you're blessed now. You have the internet in your pocket, and you've got AI now that you can use to search any topic and be an expert instantly. We never had that back then. So the tools that you have now are amazing compared to what we had access to when we started. So we sell directly to consumers via global.com. We have retailers and distributing partners across the world who we sell into. We're quite big in Asia, weirdly enough. South Korea, we have a good distributor. Japan, Taiwan. We've not entered China yet because it's just a huge topic to try and take on. We're not big enough yet. But we have a really fabulous business selling fleets of vehicles to private businesses. So Bruntwood, which is just over there, one of the buildings, we've got a fleet in their offices. So their staff use our vehicles to get around. And our biggest customer is actually Meta over in America. We sell fleets of scooters to their data centers, which is fabulous because it's like a sales channel that nobody knows about, and we're the only authorized seller on their platform. So it's really quite remarkable that, I mean, we're a tiny company really, that we sell to them over in the States. So it's pretty fabulous. So the customer experience, I mean, it goes without saying really. I mean, it has to be exceptional, otherwise you just won't stand out. Especially in today's era of, people can complain instantly online. So a lot of our business is basically about what our customers say. We have one of the highest scores on Trustpilot. We've literally got thousands of people that are really happy with what we do. And that's because we put so much into thinking about the product and how people use it, and constantly updating. So our scooters are in like the 4th, 5th, 6th generation. And we just constantly keep making them better and better and better because we design every single component and part. The scooter on the right-hand side, my right-hand side, your left, that has 300 components in there that we control that entire supply chain for, and they're all managed, and we make sure that everything, fits and doesn't go wrong, which is a very difficult task. So what I was going to do was I was just going to click on the website. Let's see if this works. There we go. Just to show you a little bit of an overview, it's the easiest way to do it of what we do. So during COVID, we had a real problem with supply chain. So I'll just show you. We started a fitness line to the brand, and we started loads of fitness products. And we basically bought a CNC machine and started making these balance boards. And they're really popular. Like it ended up becoming 20% of our business overnight during COVID, just because we had a real problem with supply chain issues. So, the term innovate or die is so true in business. Like if you've got a problem, you look at it as an opportunity to pivot, and being able to pivot and diversify is like, it's such a good life lesson for any problem. Like you can look at the problem and go, oh no, but you look at the problem and go, right, opportunity. So, my FD was like, you're crazy. You want to spend how much? You want to buy a CNC machine? You want to start making new products? But the reason why we do balance boards is because we listened to a customer who was saying they wanted to learn how to scoot because of their balance at home without the scooter. And so what they did was they took a skateboard and they were doing at home, like switching feet. And so we were like, oh, right, we could make those for customers. So we did an instructional video. It got really good reviews on YouTube. And then what happened was we were like, well, let's make some balance boards because our customers will buy them. And we did, and it was great. So we do a whole fitness line of products. And then in terms of scooters, I'll click on here. We do kids ones. These are the kids ones here. Actually, I didn't realize that was still on. That's my daughter, Ida. This scooter is 10%. Come on, sign up now. She designed the scooter. She's now 15, but at her age then she was 8, and it's named after her. That's why it's called the IXI, after her name. There are her initials. She said, Dad, I want a skateboard scooter. And I was like, we don't do skateboard scooters. So that's why it's got a plywood deck, because she really wanted it. And it actually turned out to be a really good idea, because this type of scooter, which has got larger wheels, all the adults want to ride it. Whereas the plywood deck, what would happen is it's a 12-ply deck, and if an adult stands on it above like 45, 50 kilos, it starts to bend and it feels like you're going to break it. So actually what happened was this was a really good deterrent for the adults trying to ride it. So no adult can ride it. So it's like it's a really weird kind of feature that you couldn't really design on paper. It's only through kind of like, an experience and from my daughter pushing for a skateboard scooter. So these are our adventure ones for riding off-road, and then these are our folding ones. We're known for folding. So folding is the very first, this is the 4th generation of folding now, but it all folds up like that, a little bit like a Brompton bike, I guess. And then we do electric, we do these special edition ones. This is the Marine, which is hand polished for 3 hours. It doesn't really need to exist in the world, but it does because people love it. We listen to our customers. These are the first generation of electric ones. So it's basically taking our kick scooters and converting it to electric. So it's got the battery on the front, which isn't ideal, but we started working in electric about 3 years ago. And the idea was to go into it gradually to upskill everyone in the company and also implement that supply chain. And I think what I'm going to talk about next is what is coming next, and that's our new electrics. Let me go back to here. So obviously the electrification of everything is a massive topic. Things like clean air and net zero, obviously massive agendas that governments are now getting behind. Elon has done an amazing job of, putting, millions of EVs out there. And so the infrastructure and the network is kind of catching up. And I think, we're already starting to see it happen. Paris, the American states, like all the big cities are way ahead of us in some way, but there is huge change coming when it comes to lightweight mobility, and that's where we see a massive growth area for us. And all the stats just say like the numbers are going to be immense. So it's like my industry is going to go from something like 5 billion to 35 billion by 2030 in terms of electric devices. So we are moving into that territory in a big way, and our new vehicle, the SwiftEgo G500, which you see on the screen, is our first attempt at a full new electric vehicle designed from the ground up. We've tried to tackle 4 areas with this product. So first of all, it's made in the UK, which is great. Our batteries are made in the UK. So the first area is rider safety. So it's got front and back suspension. It's designed to be like a carving, cruising machine. It's got very tall handlebars. That sweep back handlebar is really nice and comfortable. This is probably the 7th frame that I've designed and engineered, and the geometry is absolutely spot on. It's so nice to ride this thing. I can't stress. But the interesting thing about the production is it's all using production processes that require very little or no tooling. We do have one bit of tooling for the tray, which I'm going to show you later. But so rider safety is a big thing. Battery safety is a massive thing. You've all heard about fires. So we're the first company to ever put LFP battery cells into a vehicle like this. LFP is lithium ferrophosphate. Your normal e-bikes use NMC, which is nickel, manganese, cobalt batteries. We've all heard about what cobalt is and where it comes from, etc. Mined over in Africa by kids and stuff. So we don't have any of that in our battery cells. And lithium ferrophosphate can't catch fire. You could make it catch fire, but it's very difficult to make it catch fire. So it's a very safe technology. Tesla are now using it in their cells. The compromise is that the energy density is not as much as NMC cells, so you need roughly double the space. But there's no reason why you can't put it into an e-bike or a scooter like we're doing. So our batteries are made in the UK, the cells are imported, but we have a company down in Chard in the south coast who does it for us. The third area is the right to repair. So everything that you can see on the vehicle can be serviced and maintained or replaced. So the controller, for example, which is underneath the footplate, which is kind of in this area here, can be swapped out in about 10 minutes. So it's just plug and play, waterproof connectors. And then the last area is utility. So we have cargo options front and back. So you'll have pannier bags on the back, 15 litres both sides, and then a whole load of options for the front. So we've really tried to focus on creating a new standard. And what I was saying earlier about the announcement is, I'm not going to show you an image, but this vehicle will be the first vehicle in UK history that will be legal to ride on the road. So there's going to be a big press release in 2 weeks because this is actually registered to be legal. So no other scooters, unless you're part of the hire scheme, are legal to ride on the road, but we're the first company to ever do it. So keep an eye out. We're going to be making that announcement in a couple of weeks' time. There's loads of details in there. I won't go through it too much, but One of the cool things I will mention is we have this crash detection bit of hardware inside. So we're working with an American company called Quinn, who they've got this little chip that's got 2 accelerometers and magnetometer in there, and they normally put it in motorcycle helmets, and we are putting it in the vehicle. So technically, if you were to crash with this vehicle, they have this amazing app and interface where it can call the emergency services and ping your location and also the severity of the accident. So it can tell whether you're still moving, how many G's it pulled. You shouldn't be speeding though, and help you out. So that's a really cool feature that we're really excited about. And then all the other kind of mechanical stuff is really exciting too. So they're all going to be made in the UK, which is cool. We're at the moment building out our new assembly line. So we're going to be recruiting about 30 staff by the end of the summer to build out the assembly line. The batteries, as I said, are made in Chard. Our frames are made by a company down near Hertfordshire. And yeah, it's really, really exciting time where we can't wait to announce the new legal one to the public. We did show this version of it, which will be limited to 15.5 miles an hour in America, and we picked up the top award. That was back in September last year for this vehicle. So this image that you can see here is already public knowledge, so that's okay, but the new one we're keeping quiet for now. I thought I'd just give you a little bit of a teaser of some of the manufacturing videos that I've got and some of the images. So let me just see if I can do it with one hand. Go over to here, and hopefully this is going to work. Yeah, so this is like a whole bunch of frames. These are the folding scooters that were made. So we do roughly about 1,000 vehicles a year, something like that. A little bit more some years, some less other years. And this is kind of like the final assembly process of how they're all put together before they get put in cartons and packed. But what I wanted to show you here was, so this is a bit of tooling that we've had made for the new vehicle. So the new vehicle that you saw on screen has a tray at the bottom where all the electronics and everything works. So this is a huge piece of steel that's going to form a stamping tool, which it should all come in order. So this is a video of the stamping. This is like a 200-ton press. It's a massive machine, and you can see it here. So there's a flat piece of steel in the tool, and it's going to push all the way through. It's so cool to see. I really love manufacturing, so I really, this is kind of like what I live for. Because we're surrounded by objects, right? Our entire reality is objects, and they're all being manufactured. So it's all required people like yourselves to think about it and understand how, they're made and understand the process, and they're all specialists in it. So the guy that runs this press, there's so much that goes into designing that tool to make it do what it does. The sheet steel, as it goes in, actually stretches. That is enormous forces that get put through it to make that shape. And so all the wall thicknesses all the way around that shape are all different. So that's how it comes out. So the one in the middle that says setup, and you see this flange here. So this kind of shape here, where it's pulling, you can kind of tell where it's like. Imagine like putting a tablecloth on the table, and then if there's a hole in the middle and you pull it through the middle, and it would like stretch, wouldn't it? And it would pull around the corner. That's basically what's happening with a load of steel, which is amazing. I love it. It's so cool to see. So we stamp the tray out, and then it gets this very expensive laser cutter, which then trims out all the details. This is a 5-axis. This is a £1 million machine, by the way. I don't own it. Not yet. One day, yes. I do have a CNC machine, but it's only a 3-axis one. It's quite a long video. Let's see if I can speed it up a bit. You'll see there. So it's trimming out the flange around the edge there. It's so cool to see. This machine, the room is literally like from here to here. So it's a really massive laser cutting machine. This manufacturer is quite a big automotive manufacturer. So they do parts for really high-end motor industry. This is kind of the tube, that's the frame, that's formed and then laser cut. And then this is an example of kind of very simple tooling, fixtures on a welding bench. 5 minutes. Okay, yeah, I'm nearly done now. And then we set up here, and then this is the rear forks. So it's really simple stuff, really. It's just to locate different parts, and then they're welded together. There's a bunch of forks that have been made. And that's kind of like the final assembly that our frame supplier does. So that comes back to us we're based in Poynton, which is just up near the Peak District. And then it'll all be painted, and then we do all the assembly and everything, putting all the electronics in, all the wiring, etc. And that's that. Where are we now? Let's go back to here, finish up. Yeah, that's the last slide. So that's my wife, who's the other co-founder. We're on all the social media channels. Yeah, give us a like, a follow, and a share. Yeah, that's it. Thanks very much.
So thank you very much for your presentations. Nathan, you said that not every product deserves to exist, and then you all made really good cases why the products you do design do deserve to exist. You know, they meet a need, they delight people, etc. And you know, we've heard about how if you are committed to bringing a product into existence, there's a certain degree of responsibility required to make sure that it is, you know, designed well, ethically, etc. I'm interested in the idea of scale, I think, because you're both fairly small companies. You know, we can say that. You both, in fact, said that about yourselves. Because it strikes me that one of the big problems with material waste is, you know, oversupply of products. We saw those images in China fairly recently where lots of city bikes were basically being dumped en masse because there was a sudden oversupply of product where demand hadn't yet been established. So I wonder what your thoughts are there in terms of, you know, scale and size. Do you have ambitions to become as big as Brompton? Do you have ambitions to employ 20, 30, 40 people? Or are you comfortable operating at a certain level, and does that give you more control over ensuring that, you know, what you do produce is genuinely needed and won't end up in landfill? I mean, Nathan, what are your ambitions for your company in that regard? Is this how you think? Have you got a sense of a limit?
So my attitude is, if I can't be passionate about designing the product, how can I expect the team to be? So that's the number one rule. When an inquiry comes in, if I don't want to do it, then how can I expect anybody else to? So that's just the first gate that a project has to get through. And then after that, it's what are the ambitions of the client? We get a lot of clients who come in who all they want to do is make money. Whereas now you have to have a bit more of a purpose behind the mission for us to get involved with it. A lot of clients come to us, they're so eager to make a profit, to enrich themselves, that they forget that we as designers are responsible for what we put into the world. You know, we've got a duty of care to make sure that that product is right in lots of different ways, not just for the person, but for the planet as well. And we feel that responsibility. And that's why we say no to a lot of products. We're actually, if I never did another consumer product again, I wouldn't be bothered. That's my personal attitude towards it. And we're now kind of transforming into an agency that actually solves bigger problems rather than product-based problems. And what I mean by that is 2 projects we're working on at the moment. A gentleman came to us in a wheelchair and said that based upon some recent research, if we designed a certain type of product, there is the chance that we could help rehabilitate people with paralysis. That's the type of project we want to get involved with. We're working on with some of the world's leading scientists in the manufacture of nanoparticles for use in agriculture to help solve agricultural problems around the world where you can't grow plants in soil. Those sorts of problems are what we're moving into, which there is a product at the end of it, but it is not a mass-produced item. So we're trying to take the business in that direction.
Okay. Thank you. Jason?
Yeah. I mean, it's got loads of points I'd love to talk about on that. Kind of like trying to build a business with a set of beliefs that you stay true to. So like all the good stuff, wanting to do the right thing, being responsible, having a team that you look after, not turning into the boss that you possibly worked for who you hated, for example. Balancing that with the commercial pressure of trying to, bring income in to fuel the machine is a constant battle. And I'm not going to sit here and say it's easy. It's just very difficult. The amount of times I could have taken the short win, just for profit, easily. I could have done it many times, and I was advised to do it many times. But I don't do what I do really to just make profit. I do it because I need meaning in what I do. I don't want to sound too preachy about it, but I've been on the other side, and you just feel crap. You don't feel like you're doing something worthwhile. And when you're doing something worthwhile and you get a customer who spends half an hour on the phone going, that's amazing, I did this, did that, did this. I could tell you stories all day. We've worked with amputees, we've worked with people with all sorts of mental conditions that we've helped, just by, going that extra mile of going, yeah, we will. Yeah, sure, if we can. Because I know on the other side, like for me personally, I'm just built that way where I get a lot back from that. So, I've had business partners who have tried to push us in a certain direction just to make cash, just make profit. And we've managed to, so far, steer clear of that and try and be sensible in how we've grown the business and be resilient for that. So, yeah, to try and scale and become big, of course, our ambition is to become like someone like Brompton. I mean, they produce 90,000 bikes a year, which is such a huge number of vehicles. We produce just thousands, so we're tiny comparatively. But the whole kind of area of the electrification of everything, like our new electric vehicle. If you take the battery pack of our new electric vehicle and compare that to a battery pack of like a Tesla, like you're talking hundreds of vehicles you could produce for one car. 98% of the time you're basically using the energy to transport a battery. It's crazy. It's like, it doesn't make absolute sense. I'm not against EVs by any stretch of the imagination, but we've got such a long way to go. So I do think, we have grand ambitions and that's going to be a big challenge to continue doing what I do. Like, I'm the happiest in my workshop working on new product development. I hate having the title of CEO. I have to have that title for people to understand who I am, but I hate that title. It feels horrible. But and all the responsibility that comes with it. I mean, you might look at that presentation today and think, wow, cool, that's so exciting. But all the other stuff, the 99% of the other stuff that I have to deal with, supply chain, like employing people, finance, banking, it's so boring. But you have to do it. You have to get on and do it. So the fun stuff, it comes in small little bits. So yeah, our big challenge is scaling and staying true to that and outputting more. But yeah, it's a challenge.
I mean, you're all product design engineers, so I guess you're trained to see problems in terms of a solution that is probably going to be a product, but the answer may not always have to be a product. Do you ever face that dilemma where a client brings a problem or an opportunity and they're asking for a product, that's your training, but actually the solution might not be a physical object, it might be something that's a service, or it could be about adjusting infrastructure. I'm thinking of personal mobility in a city. Infrastructure is needed to allow products to be used safely. If you look at medical contexts, sometimes it's not necessarily a product that might be needed, it might be some other aspect of care. So do you ever feel this tension, if you like, where actually the solution might not be a product as such?
I will always be open and honest with the client when they come to us. In the past, I've told them that should probably be an app rather than a product. That should probably be a website rather than a product. We've had that level of conversation. But I'll also be really blunt and say, don't spend the money, go on holiday instead, if I don't think it's the right thing to do. Because I can't work on a project for 3, 6, 9 months knowing that I'm just doing it for the money and it shouldn't be there in the first place. That's my personal attitude. I wouldn't get anything out of that.
I mean, Rosie, how do you feel as an engineer mechanical engineer?
Yeah.
What's your answer to that question where, the answer may not always be?
I think during my degree I was used to dealing with physical objects, and that's probably challenged more now that I've joined MPD. So I think that's something that I'm still gaining experience of. All my previous experience has been with physical products, so learning where that line is drawn between what should be a physical thing versus what should be a website or an app. I think sometimes it can be blurred, but I'm still learning as I go on, I think, with things like that.
Yeah, the best example I've got, it might be a bit controversial to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. So I often get customers who come to me and say, what about if I buy these ceramic bearings and I'll go faster? And if I increase my tyre pressure to 110 psi from 100, it's going to be more efficient and go faster. And I could be the sales guy and go, yeah, sure, they're like 200 quid a pair and you'll go faster. The truth is you'll go such a tiny amount more faster. But there's this kind of like, we all live in this marketing machine, right, where constantly kind of being told, get this, it's better, it's bigger, do we need a new iPhone? Really? The camera's pretty freaking good, right? It's great. But we live in this world where you have to constantly keep like paying the marketeers, paying the industry, the investors need their return on investment. So it's like this perpetual machine. And we get it a lot. And I have told people, no, just get out there and exercise more and get stronger. You don't need to buy those £200 pair of ceramic bearings for your wheel. You don't need that product. You really don't need it. You just need to get out there and work harder and make your body stronger, and you'll go faster. So, it's probably like the worst sales advice ever. But I've actually wanted to. You can tell me what you think about this, but we do all of our marketing in house, and I'm not quite brave enough to do it yet. But I've wanted to come up with a marketing campaign that basically says, "Don't buy my products. Don't follow me. I don't want you to know me," something like that, because I don't want to be like I don't want to be a brand that like people, I buy into and I want to buy a t-shirt and I want you to buy the product and go off and live your life. Don't feel like you're buying a slice of a promise, because that's not what I'm into. I'm not into trying to coerce you out of your money to buy something that I manufacture. And I feel like no one's really saying that. But I do think it's such a trap. Like all brands say, yeah, we're sustainable and we're this, but really, are you? No, you're not really. So because we spend, we basically pay for Google staff and Facebook staff because we spend a lot of money on ads because we have to, right? That's the only way that we can get access to those eyeballs. They are gatekeepers of those eyeballs. You can't get them any other way. Yes, there's like TikTok and everything else, but they own that space. I don't know if you realize it, but they own it all. And us brands pay them crazy amounts of money to basically say all the same stuff. And that's, we're the best, we have the best morals, ethics, so buy our brand. So I do feel like, yeah, you're right. Like the answer isn't always buy product, isn't that? And I don't think there's enough truth telling that's told in products. So as product designers, as you are, I've said this before, I almost feel like you should be licensed to produce an object. It's so important that that thing that comes into existence has all of the good stuff by default. Like, you could talk about life cycle. So, being sustainable, like what happens afterwards, all that kind of stuff should just be default. It shouldn't be something you talk about as a brand. It should just be the default how we work. But, the world isn't constructed like that. So I would totally encourage you as, product design engineers, craftspeople to, champion those ideas and be brave enough to go against the curve, and not just copy, paste, repeat, because, the Instagram feed is this 5 seconds anyway. It's already gone. So if you're going to be, that new hot thing when you graduate, You need to think differently. And there's not enough people talking in this space about what the truth is, and that's, billions of pounds are spent trying to convince your eyeballs to buy that product every day. You can open Instagram now, and it's just they're paying so much money, and it's such a false promise a lot of the time. So really, investigate what you're buying into. It's not always a product. You're right. It's not always a product that's needed.
Well, the most sustainable product is the one that you don't produce, which is a bit of an odd thing to say, but actually, what right does your product have to exist in the world? And Jason, you're really talking about human-centered design. You talked about design, the experience of use, but human-centeredness is actually what is the benefit of this product existing. And if the benefit isn't clear, then there's no rationale for it to be produced. Do we have a question from the audience, please?
Any questions?
Yes, at the front, Fab.
Hi. When it comes to like weighing the decision of, okay, I can go for this part, it's cheaper, but people suffer for it, and weighing that decision, that morality, I guess, is, versus, okay, it takes more work, more money, is equally important, like say in the beginning when you're small, or okay, maybe I should cut a corner now, but I'll be more successful, I'll have more room to, create a better product. Like, how do you weigh that out, So if that makes sense.
There's a lot in there. So, our approach is to be uncompromising in terms of the outcome. And we often say in the company, it's all about the ride. So it's when you get on that vehicle, it should feel amazing. Like our brand name is Swifty Scooters. It's named after the swift bird. The swift bird flies very low and acrobatic to the ground. There's a whole reason behind the name. And that feeling is a little bit like skiing. If anyone here is a skier or a snowboarder and you can carve and pop in and out of a corner, that's a magical feeling. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get you to get on that vehicle, and those synapses in the brain are like, and you're having this experience that's like, wow, that's cool. That's really fun. Like if you can design that and you can sell that, like people will buy it. Because a lot of things, it's just the styling or it's the marketing blow, but actually the experience is so important. So when it comes to selecting a component, it can just be good enough. It doesn't have to be the best, because that's where price comes in, but it needs to be good enough to execute that feeling. So when we're choosing parts, that's what we're thinking about. We're thinking about price, availability. Does it meet the spec? Will it stand up to lasting a long time? So I'm not saying we're going to do, we're not a Rolls Royce, it's going to be there for 100 years and everything is dead expensive. It has to be a balance there with what the market will pay. But generally speaking, it's about coming back to your values. What are those values?
And Nathan, you talked about making compromises at the beginning of your career. You took jobs that you then regretted. You accepted work that now you wouldn't. Do you think that's inevitable, that people in this room will be faced with the same compromises, or do you think it's possible to have a really strong, position from the beginning about what you will and will not take on?
Everybody's journey is going to be different. Some people will have a much better journey than others. That's just life, though. That's just the reality of, leaving university and going out into the real world. And you've just got to kind of, I guess, have a moral compass about what you think is the right way. And whatever organisation you choose to go to, try to find one that aligns with that and matches with it. Or if it doesn't, try to convince them maybe that your way is a better way. Just to answer your question as well, it's always a negotiation with the client, because on every project we'll get given a target unit cost that we have to make the product to. Otherwise, it's not commercially viable. And it is one thing to say, we're going to do it sustainable, we're going to make it recyclable, we're going to make it all the good stuff that comes with that approach, but it still has to make a profit. And quite often we have to choose our battles, in that we might be able to get the majority of it to a certain point that we're happy with it, but we have to accept through negotiation, sometimes heated negotiation with the customer, with our client, that certain parts of it, we can't always win those battles, is the reality of it. But at least we always try to do what we can. But quite often the designer isn't always the person who makes the decision. that's how it's often marketed, but you'd be surprised just how powerful finance departments are, especially in big organisations that are mass producing products in the millions.
I mean, there is an alternative smartphone manufacturer, which I tend to talk about a lot, and they emailed me today saying camera upgrade, and it's basically a software update that will improve the performance of the camera. It's not a new phone or a new unit, but also that company, they're a not-for-profit enterprise, so they're not actually out to create stakeholder value. So I think it's interesting to think about the business logic that is behind the thinking that clients bring and manifest. And, you know, social enterprise, not-for-profit, community interest company, cooperative. There are different modes of enterprise which Design Factory, to bring this to where we started, you know, we're exploring how different modes of enterprise can kind of create a different logic and argument for what and how we design. And, you know, Manchester is the home of the cooperative movement. So I think there's a lot of interesting potential there, maybe, where the context in which we find ourselves trying to work as professional designers can actually change and it can be shifted. Fab, should we wrap up? I'm aware of time.
Hello. Yesterday we were in a big design departmental meeting where we were asked to reimagine our programme in a decade's time, how we should teach it, what we should teach, whether we should reframe our values. So as we have the pleasure of having industry in front of us, what do you think skills our graduates will need in 5 to 10 years' time?
That's a really good question. Kind of teasing into something I wanted to talk about anyway, just as you guys are talking there. And this idea of kind of like skills, it's kind of a bit of a weird word for me, because it's, if you don't have the skill, you kind of feel like, how do I acquire the skill? And it's kind of a loaded term, right? I quite like the idea of the word experiences, because experience is a little bit less loaded, and it feels like, you know, people can just acquire an experience walking down the road, having a thought. And a lot of the time, kind of like in my specific industry, having the experience of being with, I don't know, like our battery supplier, for example, you learn just so much in just such a short amount of time, and then you can then apply that, or be in another meeting where you can talk to someone and actually communicate because they think you know what you're talking about. So I think the acquisition of experiences is really important, and that should be as varied and as wide as possible. So, you know, you're right that Manchester is an amazing eclectic mix of different industries, you know, and also the neighbouring counties as well. You know, there's so much rich heritage there. You as a student, if you just took 1 day a week or 1 hour to go and visit a factory or an industry and just, you know, if you ask nicely, a lot of the time people will give you a bit of time. They'll give you a bit, half an hour, especially if you look like you're enthusiastic or you're engaged. You'd be surprised what you can get out of people. I think, you know, if you set a goal as a student to just have 50 experiences, like manufacturing or craft experiences, and going and speaking to different people, you'd acquire such a massive amount of information. Then when you go to an interview or you pitch for a job or, you know, a next project, then you've got all of that to draw upon. So I do think skill is a bit of a loaded word, because, you know, you get that on CVs, like, this is my skill list. And you're like, okay, you know, how many times do you need to open Photoshop to say you've got the skill of Photoshop? I mean, do we need Photoshop in 5 years of AI? I don't know, but experiences, I would say, yeah.
Yeah, we had that discussion in the meeting yesterday about AI. What skills will that make redundant? I mean, Nathan, you've hired Rosie recently on a certain skill set. In 5 years' time, will it be the same skill set that you're looking for, or how do you think it might be different?
I talked earlier about timing. So Rosie, the timing for Rosie coming into NPD was perfect, in that we are being asked to do more and more design engineering type, production engineering type work, in which you have to actually put it into production rather than just the conceptual / you know, visual design of something. And so Rosie's area of expertise is in that field, and I mentioned earlier that it's not enough now for a designer just to focus on the visual side of things, because if you look at the rate of progress that AI is making, it's almost commoditizing that aspect of the design process. And basically whoever's got the best AI can create the best visuals, and the tools are free. So it's getting really weird. And what you will always need though is a person who knows what they are doing, knows about user experience, knows about ergonomics, knows how to put things into production, how things should make, how something should feel. And so those skills that are being taught on the back end of projects, once the design part is done, is what we're focusing on, because at the minute AI can't do that.
Good, thank you. Let's wrap up. I'd just like to thank Nathan, Rosie, Jason, and also Fabrizio for convening this whole series. And thank you for your questions and your attention.